It's me, time-traveling Hatter. I'm here for my time lesson. Oh, hey. Oh, hey. What's going on? Where is everyone? I'm not really sure. I think we're in some sort of limbo between genres. I haven't seen any of the others, but they've been making videos, so presumably they're around. Oh. Well, I mean, if this is a bad time... No, this actually seems like the perfect time. You're what, about halfway through the list now? Yeah, I just did number 7 with Reg. Alright, well, at this point you haven't had a lot of experience with the butterfly effect. Basically, you've looked at stories where either the timeline is constant and unchangeable, or where changes occur on a grand scale of some kind. But the butterfly effect is kind of an extreme version of this latter idea, that even the smallest, most insignificant changes, like a butterfly flapping its wings, can have profound and dramatic effects on the timeline, often in completely unpredictable ways. Today's selection is that idea played out. Wouldn't be the movie The Butterfly Effect by any chance, would it? Good guess, but no. That movie did almost make the list, even though we've never actually watched it all the way through, but there's actually another movie that's even more fascinating. Come on, let's go check it out.
What's this?
We all imagine ourselves agents of our destiny.
Number 6. Run, Lola, Run. Probably like a lot of people, I first discovered this film while I was in college, and it quickly became one of my favorite time travel stories. Now, unfortunately, I can't really talk about this movie in depth without basically going through the entire plot, which I'm about to do, so obviously we're going to be getting into spoiler territory, which I don't think matters as much with this one personally, but regardless, you've been warned. The movie follows Lola and her boyfriend Manny, and Manny is engaged in some, shall we say, shady business dealings. Specifically, in this particular instance, he has to get 100,000 marks to his boss, Ronnie, or he'll likely be killed. Unfortunately, due to a series of events, he left the money on the subway where it was taken by a homeless man. So now he has 20 minutes to somehow get that money before Ronnie shows up, and his plan is to go to a nearby convenience store and rob them. But Lola convinces him to wait 20 minutes and see what she can do to get the money another way. She decides to go to her father, a bank manager, for the money, even though it seems obvious from the beginning that this isn't going to work. So now Lola begins running, and as expected, her father doesn't give her the money. So not only does she arrive to meet Manny empty-handed, but she doesn't get to him in time to stop him from robbing the convenience store. Everything goes south from there, and Lola ends up getting shot by police. Except not, because after that, Lola finds herself once again at the beginning of that 20-minute period, running to get money from her father. So she makes the run again, and this time she does manage to get the money and stop Manny from robbing the convenience store, only to have him get hit by an ambulance and killed. And then, once again, she is back 20 minutes earlier, making the run all over again, and this time, she gets the best possible outcome. They get the money, they're able to pay off Ronnie, and they're even able to have a considerable amount left over for themselves. Okay, so what the hell's going on? Well, it's never made explicitly clear, but we do know that these 3 runs are so different from each other largely because of a seemingly inconsequential encounter that Lola has at the beginning of each run. Each time as she's going down the stairs of her apartment building, she comes across a punk kid and his dog. And each time the encounter goes a little bit differently. The first time she just runs past them, the second time the boy actually trips her and she falls down the stairs, and the third time she actually jumps over them. This means that for each of the 3 runs, she's either a few seconds ahead or behind from where she was before, but as we see throughout the film, those few seconds make a huge difference. This theme of cause and effect is further reinforced by the encounters that Lola has during her run. During her run, she runs into a woman pushing a baby in a stroller, a guy on his bike, and another banker at the bank. And each time she comes across them, we see a brief flash forward of what happens in the next few minutes, hours, days, and years of their lives. And for each of those 3 runs, thanks to that few second difference, their futures turned out very differently. Now, it's implied that Lola is doing this herself, sending herself back in time to make the run again. We see that she does have certain supernatural abilities that are never fully explained, and it is strongly implied that not only is she making herself run the same 20 minutes over again, but she actually remembers certain things from one jump to the next, like how to use the gun she's holding. Not everything, otherwise she would know that it would be useless to go get the money from her father in the first place, but some things. Also, between each of the three scenes, we get a brief scene of Manny and Lola in bed, basically playing the what-if game of their relationship. After the first run, Lola asks Manny whether or not he really loves her and how he knows, and it seems as though she's contemplating whether or not she should leave him, a decision she ultimately makes by living and making the run again. After the second run, it's Manny asking Lola what she would do if he were to die and whether or not she would ultimately forget him. Lola reassures him that he's not dead yet, and then he's not. And it's never fully made clear whether or not these pillow talk scenes are things that happened in the past and they're just now remembering them, whether they're suspensions of reality and just basically questions that they're asking themselves as they're dying, or whether the run itself is a suspension of reality, basically an extension of this what-if game. But any way you look at it, it makes for some interesting implications on the movie as a whole. The movie is incredibly thought-provoking, well put together, and with a lot of attention to detail, which you would expect for a movie that is essentially about time and how things interact with each other. Still enjoyable for me to watch after 2 decades. Want to take it from here? Got it. So, much like the butterfly effect, this movie is an illustration of how small and seemingly inconsequential changes can dramatically change the timeline. We see, effectively, the same 20 minutes 3 times over, with the only initial difference being that encounter at the beginning, which bears absolutely no bearing on the actual plot, except for the fact that it changes when Lola will be in certain places. It changes how she interacts with the guy on the bike, her encounter with Mr. Meyer's car, and at what point in the conversation between her father and his mistress she walks in. And like ripples in a pond, or a sink, these changes don't seem like much at first, but they dramatically change what happens after. And the key thing here is that the changes in the timeline don't occur by and large because of decisions that the characters themselves make. Usually when we're looking at an alternate timeline, it was created because of an action by some character. Biff gives himself information about the future. Hero goes back in time to tell Peter Parker to save the cheerleader. Various pivot points in history are changed. Even in the butterfly effect, Ashton Kutcher is going back in time and changing decisions that he made. He's changing the way that he acted. This isn't that. These changes are brought about by an encounter which is not only completely inconsequential, but kind of out of Lola's control. And the decisions that she makes afterwards are brought about largely because of the flow of cause and effect. Like, she makes the decision to rob the bank in the second run because she's angry because she happened to walk in on her father at a certain point in his conversation with his mistress. So she heard information that she didn't have in the first run because she was there a few seconds earlier. This movie is illustrating how little changes affect big outcomes. But it's not completely the intellectual exercise that it seems. It seems as though they did want to make sure the movie had, like, a plot and story and stakes, and so they gave Lola a little bit more agency by having her remember certain things from run to run, and by implying that she herself is causing the runs. It's like they're trying to make sure the movie isn't too intellectual, and it kind of cheapens that aspect of the film a little bit. But still, we get the idea, and the theme of cause and effect is definitely there. That's your takeaway? That's it? Well, yeah, that's what this movie has to teach me about time, right? Is it? Heather, come on, I've done 6 of these things now. I know it seems like this is only the second one to you, but I think I've gotten pretty decent at this. Alright. If you think you've got it all figured out, then go ahead and drink from the mug. Of course. Oh, hey. Oh, hey. What's going on? Where is everyone? I'm not actually sure. We seem to be in some sort of limbo between genres. I haven't actually seen any of the other personas, although they have been making videos, so presumably they're around.
Right, well, I mean, if this is a bad time, I don't know what else will do.
This actually seems like the perfect time. You're what? About halfway through the list by now?
Yeah, just at number 7 with Reg.
Okay, well, by now you haven't had a whole lot of experience with the butterfly effect. Basically, you've looked at stories where either the timeline is constant and unchangeable, or where changes occur on a grand scale of some kind. But the butterfly effect is kind of an extreme version of this latter idea, that even the smallest, most insignificant changes, like a butterfly flapping its wings, can have profound and dramatic effects on the timeline, often in completely unpredictable ways. Today's selection is that idea played out.
Wouldn't be Run Lola Run by any chance, would it? Butterfly effect.
Yeah, actually. Good guess. Let's go check it out. Still enjoyable for me to watch after 2 decades. Want to take it from here? Sure. So, on the surface, this might seem like a simple exercise in cause and effect, but there's actually a little bit more to it if you start to dig a little bit deeper. What is it that we're actually looking at here? Is it just a thought experiment with a little bit of plot, or is there actually something to the fact that Lola seems to have a little bit more agency over the changes? And how much agency does she really have? I mean, in spite of everything, she still goes to her father at the beginning of each run, even though she knows that it's a no-go from the beginning. And maybe that's a limitation of her power. She can't change that initial decision. She can only change subsequent decisions based on where the timeline takes her. Obviously, this isn't a timeline where everything is preset and predetermined, like in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, or The Time Traveler's Wife, or the Calvin and Hobbes story, but it sure seems like one. Or more precisely, it seems like 3 separate ones. 3 20-minute periods where the outcome is already predetermined and all Lola can do is make decisions based on where the timeline takes her. Let's take another look at that initial encounter with the kid and his dog. That encounter does kind of predetermine the path that Lola will take in the next 20 minutes. The first time she just runs past them, not really doing anything, but not really being affected by them either. And throughout the timeline, she just kind of passively goes along with the plan. She goes to her father, he doesn't give her the money, and so she leaves, goes to Manny, only to find that he has already done the thing that he set out to do. So in that first run, Lola just lets things happen. She allows things to occur. The second time around, she doesn't avoid the kid, and she gets tripped and falls down the stairs. She tries to make a different decision, but it backfires, and once again, we see that occurring throughout this 20-minute run. In this run, she makes the decision to rob the bank and steal the money, basically doing the same thing that she advised Manny not to do. The end result is that Manny is hit by an ambulance. Sure, it seems like a freak accident, but it actually happened because of events that Lola set in motion. The third time, she leaps over the boy and his dog, forced into a third path, and again, we see something similar happening on her run. She misses her father because this time she didn't cause Mr. Meyer to be in an accident. He was able to meet with him, and thus she isn't able to even ask for the money and ends up going to the casino to get it. Similarly, her encounter with the biker is a little bit different this time, meaning that he is able to have his encounter with the homeless man, who then buys the bike, rides by Manny, and Manny is able to go get the money back. It all lucks out in the end, but it's predetermined luck. This film is an exercise in 3 different types of predetermination. That's it, isn't it? Sure, that's what you want to think. You've done this before, you know. I do. But I have to get there myself. Correct. Okay. Unbelievable.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, hey, listen, I'd rather not go through the whole spiel again, so is there any chance we could just kind of pick up where we left off? Sorry? Okay, number 6, Run Lola Run, girl repeats the same 20 minutes over and over again, cause and effect, determinism, blah blah blah, but I think I've got it figured out now, so let's just go ahead and do it and get it over with. Okay. So there's basically three different ways to look at this movie. First is a simple exercise in cause and effect. Second is a deeper look at the nature of determinism and how our decisions are really just affected by events that happen to us. But despite the deterministic look of this movie, I think there's actually a deeper, almost hidden free will argument in there. Stick with me on this. Let's look at that last run. Lola tried avoiding the kid and the dog, and that didn't work. She tried not avoiding them, and that didn't work. And so on her third run, she chooses a third path. She jumps over them and actually turns back and shows a little bit of aggression back to them. If the pattern from the first two runs follows, that means that this run is going to be about Lola taking charge, being proactive rather than reactive, and forging her own third path between the two that she's been given. And that's kind of what happens. Yes, she follows the same course from the start, and it seems as though she's just letting the timeline carry her like she was before, but then she gets to the casino. Now consider the scene in the casino where Lola actually gets the money. Lola has demonstrated in previous scenes that she has some sort of power related to her screams. Basically, she gets worked up and emotional, she screams, and things break. Not a lot more is known about this power, but in this scene in the casino, we see her actually using her power not as a reaction to something that's happening to her, but as a force to get the ball to go where she needs it to go. She doesn't just rely on blind luck, she doesn't just react, she doesn't just let things happen to her, she makes things happen the way that she needs them to. And there are other differences too, little things that she does differently, not because she's a few seconds behind or ahead, but because she actively makes a decision to do things differently. And it's those decisions that ultimately lead to the happy outcome. Because she decides to avoid the group of nuns instead of just running straight through them, her encounter with the guy on the bike is that much different, meaning that he is able to have his encounter with the homeless man, which is how he's able to sell his bike and how Manny is able to see the homeless man riding by and get his money back. Because she climbed into the back of the ambulance instead of just running past it, she, we assume, saves the life of the security guard who had a heart attack. In addition, she got to the convenience store and Manny that much faster, although it's academic at that point because Manny's already got his original money back from the homeless man. Even in that first pillow talk scene, she ends it by saying she has a decision to make. Maybe she has been coasting this whole time, just letting events drive her from decision to decision, but never really taking charge of her own life. The very fact that she's able to get that second and third chance to get the money to Manny seems to represent her going through some kind of existential crisis with how she acts in her life. She doesn't have to just passively coast, and she doesn't have to just blindly react. There's a third option. She can actively take charge of her own life. So the three timelines aren't just showing us how small events make big changes, and they're not just showing us how we don't really have any control over the decisions that we make. Rather, it's showing us that we do have some control over the decisions that we make, even though it doesn't always seem like it. Even in the very last shot of the movie, we don't know what Lola is gonna do with that extra money. Is she going to give it to Manny? Is she even going to tell him about it? We don't know. That's her decision to make. This movie is doing what good sci-fi fantasy stories should do, using the fantastical elements of the story to give us a very true real-life message, and I think it's one of the best uses of time travel and time-related storytelling out there. Did that do it? I think so. You should be able to move on now. Good. I was afraid I wasn't going to get past number 6. Well, you're going into the top 5 now, and number 5 is, well, let's just say it's interesting and leave it at that. Hooray.